Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Earth, where quiet curiosity meets deep questions and wonder is allowed to take its time. Tonight, we're not going to talk about the familiar history written in books. Instead, we'll drift further back, far beyond the first cities, beyond the first farmers, to a time so distant it almost feels impossible. What if Earth once held an advanced society 100,000 years ago, long before we believed such a thing could exist? If you enjoy these journeys, don't forget to subscribe and please let me know in the comments. Where and when are you listening to this story tonight? When we examine the story of humanity, we often perceive it as something clear and straightforward. In school, we're taught that there is a neat timeline. Humans appeared at a certain point, then slowly advanced step by step until reaching the present. But if we lean in closer, if we take a gentler look, we discover that this story is not as solid as it first appears. It is filled with gaps, uncertainties, and mysteries, spaces where the light doesn't quite reach. The official version goes something like this. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, emerged in Africa roughly 200,000 years ago. For tens of thousands of years, we lived as hunter-gatherers, small bands of people following animals, gathering plants, moving with the rhythm of the seasons. Then, around 10,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened. Agriculture began. Instead of wandering, people learned to plant seeds, grow food, and stay in one place. From this, villages grew. Villages became towns, towns became cities, and cities became civilizations. According to this narrative, the world we live in now, heightened with its skyscrapers, satellites, and glowing screens, is the direct outcome of those seeds first planted 10 millennia ago. From Sumer in Mesopotamia, to the Nile Valley of Egypt, to the Indus and the Yellow River, civilizations blossomed, wrote their names in stone, and left us their monuments to remember them by. The pyramids, the ziggurats, the walls, and the temples, all of it, in this timeline, belongs to a relatively recent chapter of the human story. It is a simple, elegant progression. But is it the whole truth? When you examine the evidence more closely, the picture begins to blur. Archaeology, after all, is not a finished book. It is an ongoing investigation, a puzzle where most of the pieces are missing. What we call human history is largely built from fragments, from the rare remains that survive time, bones, tools, carvings, traces of fire. And yet the earth has a way of swallowing things. Forests reclaim, oceans rise, deserts shift, and what doesn't erode is often buried deep, hidden under layers of stone and soil. Think of this. If our entire modern world were to vanish tomorrow, how much of it would survive after 100,000 years? The glass towers, the steel bridges, the cars and machines, most would crumble, rust, and fade. Forests would grow over highways, oceans would cover our cities. In the far future, perhaps only a few stone structures or fragments of concrete might remain, and those, too eroded by time, could be mistaken for something far simpler than they once were. So when we look back at our own timeline, we must keep this in mind. We believe we know when agriculture began. We believe we know when writing was invented. We believe we know when humans first began to build with stone. But all of this is based on what has survived, and the truth is, what has survived may be only a fraction of what once was. Take Göbekli Tepe, for instance. A site in modern-day Turkey, buried for thousands of years until its discovery in the 1990s. It is more than 11,000 years old, older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, and yet its massive stone pillars are carved with intricate animal designs, showing a level of sophistication that doesn't fit neatly into the official story. For decades, archaeologists assumed that humans at that time were still simple hunter-gatherers, without the complexity needed for such a structure. And yet there it stands, silent, weathered, and waiting. Discoveries like this remind us of how fragile our official timeline really is. One new find can stretch history backward, forcing us to rethink what we thought we knew. If such a site could remain hidden for so long, what else might still be waiting beneath the soil, the oceans, or the ice? In our textbooks, the story begins with us, modern humans. Before that, it is a blur of earlier species, Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo erectus. They are painted as less advanced, less capable, a prelude to the real story. But what if that is another simplification? What if intelligence and culture were not sudden sparks but waves, rising, fading, and rising again? Could there have been experiments in civilization long before the official dawn? The truth is, the Earth has had humans for far longer than recorded history suggests. For nearly 95% of our existence, we lived without writing, without monuments, without permanent cities, and yet that does not mean we were without creativity, without imagination, or without the possibility of something greater. Even the hunter-gatherer, societies we know of, were deeply skilled. They mapped the stars, tracked seasons, and understood the land with a precision modern science still struggles to match. The contrast is striking. On one hand, a clear and tidy narrative. On the other, an ocean of uncertainty with vast stretches of time where almost nothing is known. We are left with a question. Are we truly the first to reach this level of advancement, or are we simply the first that leave enough behind for us to notice? This is the heart of curiosity. The official story of humanity is both inspiring and incomplete. Inspiring because it shows how far we've come in such a short time. Incomplete because it may not be the only story. There may have been other chapters, long forgotten, erased by time, waiting quietly in the background of our imagination. And so, as we move deeper into this journey, keep that thought close. Our story is fragile, our evidence limited, and our imagination wide open. History may be less of a straight line and more of a vast landscape, full of valleys, peaks, and hidden paths we've yet to explore. When we think of history, we often imagine it as something fixed, as though the past is carved into stone, waiting patiently for us to uncover it. But the truth is softer, more delicate. The past does not survive easily. It erodes, it crumbles, it sinks beneath waves and forests, and most of it is lost before anyone can even see it. Archaeology depends on what remains. Yet what remains is only the tiniest sliver of what once existed. Imagine holding a single puzzle piece in your hand and trying to guess the entire picture. That is how fragile our understanding of deep history really is. Stone is patient. A pyramid or a temple carved from granite might stand for thousands of years, its form still recognizable, even if weathered and worn. But most of human creation is not stone. It is wood, fabric, clay, metals that rust, glass that shatters, and cities built of materials that nature eagerly reclaims. Given time, real, geological time, almost everything fades. Consider our modern world. The concrete towers, the steel bridges, the glass windows, the glowing signs. It feels solid now, immovable, but imagine Earth 100,000 years from today. Forests would push their way back through every crack. Roots would shatter concrete. Metal would corrode into dust. Plastic might linger, but broken, scattered, and unrecognizable. Rivers would shift. Seas would rise. Glaciers would grind the land smooth again. Perhaps a few traces of us would endure, but they would be rare, buried deep, or mistaken for something else. If the future archaeologists of another civilization were to dig through our remains, they might find only fragments. A shard of ceramic, a twist of metal, a fossilized imprint of plastic in stone. They might never guess at the full scale of our cities, our satellites, our global web of light and sound. This is the fragility of evidence. And if our world could vanish so completely, what might have already vanished before us? Think of the oceans. During the last ice age, sea levels were far lower than they are today. Vast stretches of land that are now underwater were once coastlines, fertile and habitable. If people lived there, and why wouldn't they, their settlements would now lie beneath the waves, hidden from our eyes. Entire chapters of history could be drowned, erased not by war or disaster, but by the slow rise of water over time. Or think of deserts. Sand can swallow cities, wind can strip away walls, leaving behind only faint outlines visible from the sky. In jungles, ruins are quickly overgrown, concealed under layers of roots and vines, so thoroughly hidden that even with modern technology, they are almost invisible. Even the earth itself shifts and folds. Mountains rise, valleys sink. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions can bury entire regions under rock and ash. The surface we walk on is not permanent, it is restless, constantly remaking itself. And with every change, pieces of the past are lost forever. But this is why archaeologists speak of the archaeological record as something incomplete, fragile, and deeply biased. We see only what survived, we see only what chance allowed to remain intact, and often we mistake that sliver of survival for the whole truth. Take comma, for example, the mysterious gaps in the fossil record. Entire species existed and vanished without leaving behind more than a trace. Even large animals, even dominant ones, can disappear from history almost entirely if conditions don't preserve them. Bones dissolve, ash scatters. The earth forgets. Now imagine a society, not a global one like ours, but perhaps regional, thriving, advanced in ways we can scarcely imagine. Imagine it flourishing for thousands of years and then ending. Over time, nature would erase its memory. Floods, fires, earthquakes, and glaciers would wipe away its architecture. Forests would consume their roads. What would remain after 100,000 years? Maybe nothing at all. Or maybe only faint hints. Out-of-place artifacts, unusual stone alignments, stories that survived as myth. And here lies the contrast. The official story tells us that no advanced society existed that far back. But the fragility of evidence whispers something different. It reminds us that absence is not proof. Just because we have not found it does not mean it never was. This is not to claim certainty, but to hold space for possibility. To acknowledge that the earth is vast, time is long, and human imagination often moves faster than our tools of discovery. The official record is only a shadow flickering against the cave wall of history. Behind it, there may be whole landscapes of forgotten time, waiting in silence. So as we continue on this journey, keep in mind how delicate the past truly is. Our story of humanity is not a fortress of fact, but a fragile house of cards balanced on the rare remains that survived chance. And if so much can vanish, then perhaps, just perhaps, more has existed than we yet dare to believe. If history is fragile, and if so much can vanish with time, then where else might we look for hints of forgotten chapters? Sometimes the answer is not found in stone or bone, but in stories. Every culture on earth carries its myths. Tales of creation, of floods, of golden ages and great falls. On the surface, these are often seen as fables, as metaphors for life, death, and rebirth. But what if, hidden beneath the poetry, they preserve whispers of real events? One of the most famous of these is the story of Atlantis, first told by Plato. It describes a great island civilization, advanced in knowledge and power, that sank beneath the sea in a single night of disaster. To many, it is pure allegory, a parable about pride and downfall, yet the imagery lingers: a lost world, a sudden collapse, a memory drowned. Could it be that Plato's tale preserved a distant echo of something long forgotten, retold through generations until fact blended with myth? And Atlantis is not alone. In India, ancient Sanskrit texts speak of great cities of the gods with flying machines called vimanas. In Mesoamerican lore, the gods lived in earlier worlds that ended in destruction before ours began. In Aboriginal, Australian traditions, there are stories of times before the rising of the seas, when the coastline stretched far beyond today's shores. Across Polynesia, there are tales of islands swallowed by the ocean, remembered in song and chant. The pattern is striking. Myths from different continents, born from cultures that never met, often tell of similar themes: floods, golden ages, lost lands, sudden catastrophes. Is this a coincidence, or could it suggest that humanity carries in its storytelling a memory of real ancient events, disasters that reshape the world, and perhaps the downfall of societies we no longer recognize? Of course, myth is not history. It does not follow dates or facts. It moves through symbols, through dreamlike imagery, through exaggeration and transformation. But sometimes symbols hold seeds of truth. For example, the story of a great flood is nearly universal. From the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical tale of Noah to flood myths in China, Africa, and the Americas, the image of the world drowned is everywhere. Science tells us that during the last ice age, massive floods did occur as glaciers melted and seas rose dramatically. Coastal lands were swallowed. Rivers changed course. To the people who lived through it, such events would have felt like the end of the world. And so they were remembered, retold, and mythologized. If floods can be remembered in myth, then what else might be hidden there? Could myths of flying machines reflect misunderstood memories of advanced technologies? Could stories of lost golden ages be cultural echoes of real societies that thrived before written history? Or are these tales simply the natural dreams of the human mind, repeating the same patterns across the globe? Here again, we see contrast. Science seeks evidence, material traces that can be measured and tested. Myth offers memory, fluidity, and symbolism resistant to certainty. But both speak in different ways about origins and endings, about what came before us. Consider the ancient Greek notion of the ages of man. According to Hesiod, humanity began in a golden age, a time of peace and abundance, followed by a silver age, a bronze age, and then the present iron age, a time of struggle and decline. In Hindu cosmology, time is cyclical, moving through vast ages called yugas, with civilizations rising and falling again and again. The Maya, too, envisioned time in great cycles where worlds are created and destroyed in rhythm. To modern ears, these sound like myths, not records. Yet their recurring patterns, golden beginnings, catastrophic endings, cycles of rise and fall, mirror what we now know from history and geology. Civilizations do collapse, climate does change, worlds do end, at least for those living through them. Perhaps myth is not an alternative to history, but another way of carrying it forward. And here lies the quiet wonder. When we listen to ancient myths, we are not just hearing stories. We are hearing voices stretched across time. We are listening to ancestors trying to make sense of events that shook their world. Whether those events were floods, volcanic eruptions, falling stars, or the memory of societies lost, their echoes come down to us wrapped in symbols. When we consider the possibility of an advanced society 100,000 years ago, myth does not give us proof. But it does permit us to wonder. It reminds us that humanity has always sensed that the past is deeper, more layered, more mysterious than we can easily grasp. And perhaps in the poetic fragments of those old tales, there are clues. Distorted, dreamlike, but still pointing toward something real. What if Atlantis was not a single island, but a memory of many lost coastal settlements drowned by rising seas? What if golden ages were not mere fantasies, but cultural memories of times when human life was easier, perhaps through knowledge or abundance now forgotten? What if the cycle of destruction and rebirth in myth reflects not imagination alone, but patterns written into the earth itself? We may never know the answers with certainty, but to listen to myth is to stand at the edge of possibility, where the boundary between fact and story grows thin. And in that liminal space, curiosity is free to wander. The myths do not prove that an advanced society existed 100,000 years ago. But they remind us of something equally important, that humans have always carried a sense of deep time, of lost worlds, of forgotten ages, and maybe, just maybe, those stories are not only dreams, but distant echoes, carried like a whisper across the vastness of history. Sometimes the strongest mysteries are not vast myths or sweeping legends, but small, stubborn objects. Things that do not seem to belong where they are found. Archaeologists call them anomalies, curiosities, mistakes in interpretation. Others call them out-of-place artifacts. These artifacts scattered across the world raise quiet questions. They are things that challenge the neatness of our official story. Objects that seem too old, too advanced, or too strange to fit comfortably into the timeline we have built. Take comma, for example, the Antikythera mechanism. Discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece in the early 1900s, it looked at first like a corroded lump of bronze. Only later, with X-rays and careful study, did its true nature emerge, a sophisticated gear-driven device, more than 2,000 years old, designed to track the movements of the heavens. It was, in essence, an ancient computer. Nothing else like it was known from that time. For centuries, it seemed impossible that such precision engineering could exist in the ancient world. And yet there it was, lying silent at the bottom of the sea. The Antikythera mechanism is not 100,000 years old, but it reminds us of something important. Human ingenuity can appear in sudden, unexpected places. When one artifact is uncovered, it can rewrite what we thought possible. If such a device can survive, hidden in the sea for 2 millennia, what might have been lost entirely in the tens of millennia before? Then there are the enigmatic stone structures found across the world. Consider the great megaliths of Baalbek in Lebanon, where stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons rest precisely aligned, as though placed by impossible strength. Or the trilithons of Stonehenge, or the Moai statues of Easter Island. These are not out of place in time, they belong to known cultures, but they still whisper of knowledge and techniques we do not fully understand. If these achievements can puzzle us, what of structures long eroded or completely buried, belonging to forgotten societies? Some artifacts, however, challenge time itself. In South Africa, small metallic spheres with grooves etched around their circumference have been found in rock layers said to be billions of years old. Scientists debate their origin, natural mineral formations or something else entirely. Most explanations lean toward geology. Yet for those who wonder, they remain symbols of possibility, tiny, mysterious objects hinting at stories untold. In Siberia, strange micro-objects, spiral-shaped and metallic, were discovered in river sediments. Their size was microscopic, their form precise as though engineered. The sediments themselves were dated to thousands, even tens of thousands of years ago. Are they evidence of ancient technology or contamination, modern debris slipping into
older layers? The debate continues. And then there are the maps.
The Piri Reis map, drawn in the early 1500s by an Ottoman admiral, seems to depict coastlines that explorers of his time should not have known. Parts of Antarctica appear on the map, shown without ice. Did the mapmaker draw from older, forgotten sources, or is it a coincidence, artistic guesswork? Again, no certainty, only a suggestion, enough to open the door of wonder. Of course, mainstream archaeology offers grounded explanations for most of these anomalies, natural formations mistaken for artifacts, later contamination of older layers, lost but not impossible craftsmanship. Myths of precision were exaggerated over time. The scientific method rightly asks for skepticism, for repeatable evidence, for proof that survives scrutiny. And yet here is the contrast. Even when explanations are offered, the artifacts still
stir something within us. They tug at the edges of the imagination, asking, what if?
What if these oddities are the crumbs of a much older banquet, the faintest remains of societies erased by time? What if the anomalies are not errors but glimpses? It is tempting, of course, to leap to conclusions, to declare that every unusual object must be proof of ancient technology or forgotten civilizations. But perhaps the greater wonder lies in restraint, in holding the question open without needing to close it. Out-of-place artifacts invite us into that space. They remind us that the story of humanity is stitched together from fragments, and sometimes the threads are frayed, pointing to patterns we can barely see. Imagine, for a moment, that an advanced society did exist 100,000 years ago. What traces would survive? Perhaps not cities or machines. Those would erode, corrode, vanish. But maybe small things would endure. A tool unusually carved from stone, a fragment of metal alloy not easily explained, an ancient carving showing knowledge of the stars, far older than it should be. Individually, each might be dismissed as
an anomaly. Together they might suggest a whisper of something larger. And here is where the wonder deepens. Because whether these artifacts are genuine anomalies or simply misunderstandings, they remind us of our own limits. They show us that
knowledge is never complete, that the earth still holds secrets in its soil and stone. Every out-of-place artifact is both a riddle and an invitation. Perhaps the greatest artifact of all is not an object, but curiosity itself. The enduring human impulse to look at something that doesn't fit and to ask softly, what if? So far, we have looked at the official timeline of humanity, at the fragility of evidence, and at myths and artifacts that do not quite fit. Each of these hints leaves us with a question, but now let us lean fully into imagination. Let us ask, if there had been an advanced society 100,000 years ago, what might it have looked like? The first step is to loosen our assumptions. When we hear advanced society, we often picture our own world reflected backward. Steel, towers, glowing screens, spacecraft and machines. But advancement does not have to look like us. A civilization could be advanced in ways that left little of the traces we expect. Consider technology not of metal, but of wood, fiber, or organic. Material crafted so skillfully that it left little fossil trace. Imagine tools designed to return to the earth when no longer needed, dissolving back into soil and rain. Such a society might thrive for millennia and vanish almost without a footprint, leaving behind not skyscrapers, but perhaps only patterns in myth and memory. Or consider a culture advanced not in machines, but in knowledge. Of the stars, the seas, the earth itself. They might have mapped the heavens with a precision that surprises us, tracked planetary cycles across tens of thousands of years, or understood natural forces in ways that seem like magic today. We know even from early human groups that the stars mattered. They guided migrations, seasons, and stories. Could an older, forgotten society have built entire systems of life around celestial knowledge? There is also the possibility of energy. Our civilization is built on fossil fuels, electricity, and industry. But what if another society found different pathways? Perhaps they harnessed natural energies we overlook, the power of magnetism, resonance, or sound. Ancient stories often speak of builders who moved stones with music, who shaped structures with vibration. Are these only metaphors or faint recollections of a science we no longer know? And then there is harmony. When we imagine advanced societies, we often think of conquest and expansion. But what if advancement meant the opposite? Living so deeply in balance with nature that little was left behind. A society might have reached heights of art, spirituality, and ecological understanding that surpassed our own, and yet left almost nothing for archaeologists to uncover. Their legacy would not be cities of stone, but perhaps subtle alignments, sacred landscapes, or knowledge passed through story. Of course, even advanced societies are not immune to the cycles of rise and fall. If such a culture did exist 100,000 years ago, what could have ended it? The Earth itself offers many answers. Climate swings have been dramatic in that span of time, ice ages advancing and retreating, seas rising hundreds of feet, deserts expanding where grasslands once grew. A single catastrophic event, like a massive volcanic eruption or an asteroid strike, could erase centuries of progress in a matter of days, and what remained might be buried, drowned, or burned away. Another possibility is that their downfall was internal. Civilizations, as we know from our own history, can collapse through war, overuse of resources, or social fragmentation. Rome fell. The Maya cities were abandoned. Mesopotamia's cradles of culture dried up. Perhaps an ancient society, too, once reached a peak before unraveling, leaving only whispers behind. But what might they have left us, even if unconsciously? Could fragments of their knowledge survive as myth or as peculiar skills passed down? When we look at the precision of megalithic architecture or the astronomical alignments in ancient monuments, could some of it be echoes of knowledge inherited from deeper time? Or are we projecting patterns onto chance? There is a humbling thought here. If a civilization did exist 100,000 years ago, it may have been as different from us as we are from the Neanderthals. Their priorities, their values, and their ways of shaping the world might be almost unrecognizable. Perhaps their idea of advancement was not industry or empire, but consciousness, ways of experiencing reality that we have forgotten or can barely imagine. Speculation, of course, cannot replace evidence, but it has its place. It opens the imagination, letting us see that advanced does not always mean modern, that complexity does not always mean skyscrapers, and that intelligence can take many forms. To picture an ancient society is not to insist it must have existed, but to stretch the boundaries of what we think possible. It is to remind ourselves that time is vast and that we may not be the only experiment in civilization Earth has hosted. Let us imagine, then, for a moment, standing in such a world. The air is clean, the night sky brilliant with unpolluted stars. A city, not of steel, but of stone, wood, and living structures grown in harmony with the land. Streets aligned with solstices. Great meeting places where knowledge of the stars is passed down in song. Tools of fiber, metal, and stone, crafted with methods lost to us. Energy drawn not from burning, but from resonance, light, or water. We might not even recognize it as advanced. We might mistake it for something simple, and yet to them it could have been a golden age. And here is the contrast. Our civilization leaves unmistakable traces. Satellites circling the Earth, plastics embedded in rock layers, carbon etched into the atmosphere. But perhaps another kind of civilization left almost none. Their mastery was subtle, their legacy ephemeral, and so they are invisible to our archaeology, remembered only in myth, and imagined in quiet moments like this. In the end, the question is less about proving their existence and more about what imagining them does to us. It humbles us. It stretches
us. Reminds us that the human story is not the only story Earth could tell.
Maybe we are the first. Maybe we are not. Either way, the act of wondering connects us to the deep time of the planet, to the mystery of the ages, and to the possibility that the Earth has secrets far older than we can comprehend. When we think about civilizations, we often imagine them as permanent. The pyramids feel eternal. The Roman aqueducts still stand. The Great Wall winds across the mountains as if it could last forever. But history whispers something different. Permanence is an illusion. Civilizations rise, shine brightly for a time, and then, sooner or later, they fall. Take the Roman Empire. At its height, it stretched across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Roman roads crisscrossed continents, their aqueducts carried water for miles, and their armies seemed unstoppable. And yet it crumbled. By the 5th century, Rome itself had been sacked, its glory fading into memory. What had seemed unshakable dissolved into fragments, leaving only ruins to be rediscovered centuries later. Or think of the Maya. They built great cities in the jungles of Central America, aligned their temples with the stars, and developed a sophisticated calendar that still astonishes us. But by the time Europeans arrived, those cities were empty, swallowed by vines and silence. Climate shifts, wars, and resource pressures all may have played a part. The Maya did not vanish as a people, but their civilization, as it had once existed, was gone. History offers many such examples. Mesopotamia, the so-called cradle of civilization, flourished with cities like Ur and Babylon, but shifting rivers and salinized soil eventually brought decline. The Indus Valley civilization built carefully planned cities with advanced drainage systems, yet it too faded, leaving behind only undeciphered scripts and scattered ruins. The pattern is clear. Civilizations, no matter how powerful, are fragile. They are vulnerable to changes in climate, in resources, in politics, and in the unpredictability of nature. Sometimes the fall is sudden, sometimes gradual, but always it comes. We let us expand this pattern further back. If we accept that great societies have risen and fallen repeatedly over the last 6,000 years, why could the same not have happened 100,000 years ago? The difference, of course, is time. The ruins of Rome still stand because they are only a couple of millennia old. The pyramids endure because desert sands preserved them, but stretch the time scale 10 times further, and the traces grow thinner, more fragile, more easily erased. Imagine a civilization flourishing on a coastline 120,000 years ago during a warmer period when seas were lower. Its cities, its ports, its monuments may have thrived, but then the ice returned, glaciers advanced, seas rose. Again, and the world shifted. Over thousands of years, the coastline sank beneath the ocean, erasing nearly everything. Today, such a society would be invisible to us, its story dissolved into salt water and sediment. The rise and fall cycle teaches
us humility.
We often think of ourselves as unique, as the pinnacle of history, but the truth is we are simply another civilization on Earth's long timeline, fragile, temporary, vulnerable. Rome fell, the Maya fell, Mesopotamia fell. Why would we imagine
we are immune? And if that is true for us, then it could have been true for others.
A society 100,000 years ago might have risen, reached a peak of advancement, perhaps in ways we cannot even imagine, and then fallen, leaving almost no trace behind. Just as Rome left ruins, it might have left fragments. Just as the Maya left myths, they might have left whispers. Just as the Indus left undeciphered scripts, they might have left mysteries we do not yet recognize. Here, the contrast sharpens. The official story says there was nothing advanced that long ago, but the cycle of history shows us that civilizations are not permanent. They are fragile, fleeting, and often forgotten. And so the possibility of a lost society is not so far-fetched as it first seems. To reflect on this is to step into a larger rhythm, the rhythm of rise and fall, of creation and collapse, of light and darkness. It is a rhythm as old as the earth itself, and perhaps one we are still a part of. And in the silence left after each fall, there is always the chance that memory fades into myth, and history slips into mystery. When we look at a map of the world, it feels fixed. Continents appear solid, oceans eternal, mountains immovable. But the earth, in truth, is always in motion. Mountains rise and crumble, rivers carve new paths, oceans advance and retreat. Given enough time, even the strongest. Stone can vanish, ground into sand and dust. This is the perspective of geological time. A scale so vast it stretches beyond imagination. Human lifespans are fleeting. Civilizations rise and fall in the span of a few thousand years. But the Earth has been shaping and reshaping itself for billions. What looks permanent to us is, in geological terms, a flicker. Think of coastlines. Just 20,000 years ago, during the peak of the last ice age, sea levels were over 100 meters lower than today. Land bridges connected continents. Vast plains stretched where oceans now lie. Today those plains are hidden beneath the waves, and the memory of what once stood there has been drowned. If a city had been built on those ancient shores, its ruins might rest on the sea floor, buried beneath layers of sand, unreachable and unseen. Volcanoes tell a similar story. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, it buried Pompeii beneath ash, preserving the city in a kind of frozen time capsule. But given tens of thousands of years, even those remains would erode. Lava can entomb and destroy. Fire can erase in moments what took centuries to build. Multiply that destruction over millennia, and entire landscapes, even civilizations, could vanish without a trace. Earthquakes shift landscapes too. Cities crumble in minutes when the ground shakes. In regions of high tectonic activity, the surface is constantly remade, swallowing evidence into faults and folds. Over tens of thousands of years, these scars heal, the land smooths over, and history disappears beneath the crust. Then there are glaciers, vast rivers of ice that carve valleys, grind down mountains, and carry away everything in their path. Imagine a city standing proud 100,000 years ago in Northern Europe or North America. When the ice advanced, it would not have left gentle ruins behind. It would have scraped the land bare, crushing stone, scattering debris, burying memory under layers of ice and gravel. The ocean floor hides perhaps the greatest secrets. Most of the Earth's surface lies beneath water, much of it unexplored. Technology has mapped only a fraction of the seabed, and even less has been closely studied. Submerged mountain ranges, trenches deeper than Everest is tall, and vast plains remain almost unknown. If lost cities exist, they could be resting in silence beneath these waters, untouched, for tens of thousands of years. We already have hints. Off the coast of India, near Dwarka, divers have found submerged structures that suggest ancient settlements swallowed by the sea. Off Japan's Yonaguni Island, massive stone-like formations spark debate. Are they natural, or remnants of something built by human hands long ago? These sites are contested, uncertain, but they show us what might be possible. That Earth's restless geology can both erase and preserve, hiding fragments of forgotten histories. Geological time also works against us in subtler ways. Stone erodes, metals corrode, wood decays. Even the strongest materials crumble when given thousands upon thousands of years. If our modern cities were abandoned today, what would remain in 100,000 years? Skyscrapers would fall, bridges would collapse, and most evidence of technology would vanish. Perhaps a few durable relics, plastics buried in sediments, radioactive isotopes locked in rock, would whisper that we had once been here. But the grand image of our civilization would dissolve, as fragile as any before. And so we are faced with a sobering thought. If another society existed long before us, the odds of its survival in the geological record are slim. The Earth is too restless, too powerful, too patient. It remakes itself again and again, washing the canvas clean. This is where known history and speculation meet. On one side, we have the scientific truth that the planet erases traces over time. On the other hand, we hold the possibility that entire chapters of human or pre-human history may already be lost. The two are not at odds. In fact, they fit together. The more we understand how fragile evidence is, the more plausible the idea becomes that we may not be the first. In the stillness of the night, as we imagine forgotten coastlines and vanished cities, we can let this thought rest gently. The Earth holds secrets deeper than time, and we are only scratching the surface. When we think of history, we often imagine it as something neatly recorded, carefully preserved in museums and books. But the truth is more fragile. Most of the past is gone, erased by time, weather, and the quiet work of the Earth. What we know of human history comes from fragments. Tools chipped from stone, bones buried in caves, carvings on rock. It is a puzzle with far more missing pieces than complete ones. And sometimes a fragment doesn't quite fit. Archaeologists call these anomalies, outliers, discoveries that don't line up neatly with what we expect. Usually they are explained as errors, misinterpretations, or coincidences, but every so often they leave us wondering, could these be the subtle fingerprints of something older, something forgotten? Consider the map of human migration. For decades, the prevailing story was that modern humans left Africa around 60,000 years ago and spread across the world. Yet newer evidence suggests earlier journeys, footprints in mud, tools found in unexpected layers of soil, bones that date farther back than once believed. These finds don't rewrite the entire story, but they remind us how fluid our knowledge is. If we can still be surprised by footprints only tens of thousands of years old, what might we have missed from 100,000 years ago? Then there are ancient structures whose origins remain unclear. In places like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, massive stone pillars were arranged by human hands over 11,000 years ago, long before cities or agriculture were thought to exist. When this site was first uncovered, it overturned assumptions about When complex societies began, if something of this scale could remain hidden until the 1990s, what else could still lie beneath fields, deserts, and seas? Even our own technology leaves behind signals that might be misread in the far future. Plastics could harden into strange stones. Roads could look like natural lines of rock. Skyscraper foundations could resemble odd geological formations. If another species were to study our ruins 100,000 years from now, would they see us clearly, or only faint traces that make no immediate sense? There are also natural formations that mimic the artificial. The Yonaguni monument in Japan resembles a stepped pyramid, yet many geologists believe it is a natural creation of tectonic shifts and currents. The debate itself highlights the difficulty. When the line between natural and human-made blurs, certainty fades. Could we already have walked past other such formations, dismissing them as natural when they were not? Artifacts, too, occasionally surface out of context. Iron nails embedded in ancient rock, objects found in coal seams, spheres with mysterious grooves. Most of these are explained away as modern contamination or natural curiosities. Yet the stories persist, tucked into the margins of archaeology. If only one or two are genuine, what larger story might they whisper? Science by nature is cautious. It works to avoid leaps beyond evidence, to build solid ground before stepping further. But curiosity invites us to wonder, what if some of these outliers are not mistakes? What if they are glimpses of a chapter we have not yet recognized? The truth is, we might already be holding pieces of a forgotten past, fragments we don't yet know how to read. A stone tool was found in the wrong place, a structure too old for comfort, a myth that echoes too strongly across cultures. They may sit quietly in museums or storage rooms, catalogued as unusual, but never quite explained. And so we are left with a haunting possibility that the signs of an ancient advanced society are not entirely missing, but scattered, subtle, half-hidden, waiting for us to notice. In the stillness of night, as we reflect on these fragile clues, we can hold this gentle thought. The story of humanity may be larger, deeper, and stranger than we have yet allowed ourselves to believe. If an advanced society truly lived on Earth 100,000 years ago, then everything we think we know about ourselves would shift. Our sense of being the first, the pioneers of civilization, would dissolve into something more humbling. We would become inheritors of a cycle, not the originators of it. Imagine, for a moment, that long before the pyramids or the first city-states, another people mastered technologies, built monuments, and created a culture that thrived. Their world might have been vastly different from ours, shaped not by fossil fuels or metal, but perhaps by resources we can only guess at. Or perhaps their brilliance lay not in technology as we define it, but in forms of knowledge we no longer recognize. Mastery of the natural world, harmony with energy, a science that blended with what we now call myth. If they were here, then the silence of their absence would become even more striking. Where did they go? Did they collapse under the weight of their own achievements, as so many societies do? Were they erased by forces larger than themselves? A shifting climate, a great flood, an asteroid strike? Or did they fade in ways we can't even imagine? Their presence absorbed into the earth until only whispers remain? And then the harder question, what does it mean for us if another advanced society once stood on this planet? Then perhaps our current age is not the first, nor will it be the last. Our cities of steel and glass, our satellites orbiting high above, our vast networks of communication. These too may one day vanish. What feels permanent in our lifetime is fleeting in geological time. This thought can be sobering, but it can also be liberating. For it reminds us that we are part of something much larger, not just a single line of progress, but a cycle of rise, fall, and renewal. The Earth has seen civilizations come and go, oceans rise and fall, and mountains crumble and rebuild. We are another chapter in that story, and perhaps not the final one. If they were here, then perhaps their greatest gift to us is perspective. The knowledge that intelligence can bloom, flourish, and then disappear, and that life, resilient as ever, carries on. It invites us to ask, how will we be remembered? What traces of us will endure? Consider how fragile our legacy really is. 100,000 years from now, will anyone know our languages, our stories, our music? Will skyscrapers still stand, or will they have eroded into dust? Will satellites still orbit, or will they have fallen back into the atmosphere, burning away unnoticed? If we are lucky, perhaps a few fragments will remain. A fossilized city, a piece of technology encased in stone, an odd layer in the geological record. And perhaps future beings, human or otherwise, will wonder about us just as we now wonder about the possibility of those who came before. There is also a more intimate question. If they were here, what wisdom did they hold that we have lost? Did they understand balance better than we do? Did they live in closer harmony with the Earth, or did they struggle with the same challenges we face? Resource scarcity, conflict, pride. Were they dreamers, artists, storytellers like us? Did they look at the stars and wonder if they were alone? To imagine them is to see ourselves reflected. Their presence, even as a possibility, humbles us and invites us to look with fresh eyes at our own journey. Whether they existed or not, the lesson remains. Civilizations are fragile, time is vast, and what we choose to build or destroy echoes far beyond us, and so, in the stillness of night, we can hold this thought gently. If they were here, then we are not alone in history. We are part of a greater story, one that stretches farther back than we ever dreamed, and forward into futures we cannot yet see. Hello again, and thank you for staying with me on this long journey. We've wandered across myths and mysteries, sifted through fragile clues, and let our imagination step into places where history refuses to give us answers. Tonight's question: what if Earth once held an advanced society 100,000 years ago, has carried us far beyond the comfort of the familiar timeline? And now, as we return, the most important thing may not be whether such a society truly existed, but what the possibility reveals about us. The perspective it offers is humbling. We often think of human civilization as the pinnacle, the great unfolding story that began with us and will surely continue with us. Yet, when you pull back, when you stretch the canvas of time to hundreds of thousands or even millions of years, we see how small our place really is. Civilizations are fragile. They rise with brilliance, but they are also vulnerable to nature, to chance, and sometimes to themselves. If another society did rise long before ours, then they too knew the joy of discovery, the pride of building, the comfort of stories told under the stars, and yet their voices are gone, their monuments silent, their knowledge folded back into the earth. That possibility reminds us that nothing is permanent. But it also reminds us of something gentle. Impermanence is not failure. It is the rhythm of life on this planet. Mountains rise and crumble. Oceans expand and retreat. Species flourish and fade. Civilizations, too, are part of this ebb and flow. And so the humbling perspective is not just that we might not be the first, It's that we too are part of a cycle greater than ourselves. Perhaps our task is not to cling to permanence, but to live with intention, to create with care, knowing that one day we will be a memory, a whisper, maybe a mystery for others to uncover. When seen this way, the thought is not frightening, but grounding. It makes every moment feel more precious, every story told, every connection made, every kindness shared. These are the things that echo even when the monuments fall. So tonight, as you drift into rest, carry this with you. We are small, yes, but we are also wondrously part of something vast. Whether or not there was another society before us, we are here now, walking our brief chapter of Earth's long story. And that is enough. Thank you for spending your time on this quiet journey of curiosity and wonder. If you'd like to join me for more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, and before you close your eyes, share with me in the comments. Where in the world and at what moment of your day or night did you listen to this? Until next time, may your questions be gentle, your wonder endless, and your dreams filled with mystery.